Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the DD Geopolitics live stream. I am your host, Sarah, and I am joined by John and one of my favorite guests, and could not come at a more perfect time, Marwa Osman, off of her trip to Venezuela to observe the elections, and then back to the Axis to get us hyped for what could possibly be coming. Marwa, how are you aside from the horrible migraine that you're suffering from?
I'm sorry. First of all, thank you very much for having me, Sarah. It's always a pleasure to be on with you. And I'm better. I can handle it, no worries. But thank you for having me.
Thank you. And John, how are you today? We're trying to get the Mondays fixed this morning. Give you guys a good start to the week.
Yeah, doing good. There's going to be too much happening this week, so I'm just preparing myself for crazy week, long nights, maybe some spaces, and
who even knows what will happen. We only have one thing scheduled this week because I know everything else will get postponed, canceled, and moved. So we'll start off with probably one of my favorite clips of the summer, which is Marwa being adorable and awesome in Venezuela.
Venezuela ha provocado más de un baño de sangre. Lo viví como joven que sobreviví. Hoy entiendo, gracias a Dios, entiendo por qué sobreviví.
I think it was the little head nod, like the knowing head nod, like just hearing, I could hear Marwa's voice saying Palestine will be free. But can you, since you were there and you had your Palestine and I'm sure Kofia and everything, can you touch on some of the parallels that you noticed?
Sure. Let me just say that nod was a thank you to the cameraman who actually I saw him looking at me before he actually put me live on TV because I was listening. I had my headphones on and I was listening to what President Maduro was saying, and I saw him and I thought maybe he's taking a shot here, and I tried, and actually it worked, and I'm very happy that it worked with Palestine. With the Palestinian flag. I already had the Axis of Resistance flag, but that was too much, and it would have required me to stand up, and I'm embarrassed. I wouldn't stand up while the president is talking to show a flag. I would never do that. But it was a nice moment because just right before that, he was actually mentioning Gaza and Palestine, and that was very, very important from a person coming from a war zone in support of Gaza. So yeah, that moment was special though.
What parallels do you notice, or maybe it became even more obvious while you were in Venezuela, the liberation struggles of the Venezuelan people and the Palestinians?
Well, let me begin by saying that I already made a trip across the pond to Cuba 2 years ago, and I already met the people who have been struggling for more than 60 to 70 years against the U.S. imperialism. But Venezuela is a bit different than Cuba because Cuba is right there, and it's sanctioned and it's besieged, and there are a lot of difficulties there, despite the fact that it's a socialist community and a socialist economy that helps a lot of people, especially the poorer ones, the less advanced, the less one with advantages. But it helps them with things that I would wish my community here in Lebanon provides. But Venezuela was something a bit different. It's bigger. It has a slightly better economy despite the sanctions and also the economic and the political blockade by the U.S. imperialist powers and with its allies as well, the European allies as well, and with Europeans basically stealing the gold of Venezuela, trying to steal the oil, which basically is the primary reason behind all of this havoc they're trying to create in Venezuela. But what was not much of a surprise, but much of what I needed to be there to learn was the knowledge and the education that these people had for my region. I didn't have to explain where I came from, why I'm wearing the kufiye, why I have the flag of the Axis of Resistance. People were actually like naming the countries on the big flag with the Axis of Resistance and telling me how proud they are that my people are fighting back the Zionist aggression against Palestinians. So I didn't need as much when I go to Europe, for example. I keep explaining where I'm from, why I look like that. No one even hinted that I look different. I was the only hijabi woman amongst 1,200 international observers, and I felt like home. No one even looked at me in a different way, and that really hit home for me. And also, it was the last campaigning rally that happened. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, in Lebanon, we as Shias in Lebanon, we have pride in the Ashur of Muharram and Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, which when we commemorate the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, peace be upon him, and we have more than 2 million people in the streets on that one day. Of course, that cannot be compared, for example, with Yemen. Yemen is like, I don't know, 103 times bigger than Lebanon. But when I see Venezuela, and it's just a campaign party, basically, and it stretched for 8 or 9 avenues, millions of people in the streets. I was like, where is the Western media getting their numbers from, saying that this man doesn't have what it takes to get reelected, or that the people hate him, or the people doesn't want him? Or every street I walked down Caracas, it was people with his photo, with the flags, it was like a carnival. It was not even like something that would basically issue some sort of a notion that it looks like a fight, or that people are worried. No, people were celebrating, because this is part of who they are as Chavistas. So that was also a big thing for me to learn firsthand. And also, it was an opportunity for me to meet a couple of the opposition members as well, who are a bit respectable. I mean, not violent. And the issue is, especially on the day of the elections, when we were doing the regular routine lookout into the polling stations, talking to people, talking to coordinators and whatnot, I spoke to a lot of people who are actually basically at that point were standing in line waiting to go and vote for the opposition, and they were 110%. I had someone tell me he's like he can blindly believe in the system, even if the person that he doesn't support wins. So they believe in their system, and that's actually why everyone took part in that elections. But the question was, why would that particular person who was fully supported and pushed by the US would not agree to sign on the CNE saying that he would accept the election results? Why would you go through that campaign and then take part in the elections if you don't believe in the process? That's a big question. So I did ask the people this. I asked, why do you think that they're not signing that particular document that would say that whoever wins, wins? Because the people in line believed that they would accept the winner, whoever it is, because they had high hopes for their own candidate. And at the same time, I said, look, this is an election. You really don't know until the count is there, until you start counting the votes. And they said, we believe in the system put in Venezuela because we believe in our country. But few hours later, when the results were up, you had voices coming from basically from Washington and its allies saying it's a fraud election, it's rigged, it's not. We were there. What is to be rigged? We were talking to people. We were monitoring the actual process, and everything was going a-okay, and people were happy to be part of this. I don't know why democracy sounds a bit too difficult for the American establishment to grasp and to comprehend.
Yeah, well, that's exactly where I wanted to go, Marwa. And first of all, it's great to meet you. I know we didn't really get a chance.
My pleasure, John.
But I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to speak with you,
my pleasure.
and to know that we had fervent supporters of the axis of resistance on the ground, building solidarity with countries like Venezuela, and having competent people to observe the election process too. I think just hugely valuable. So I just wanted to first start by thanking you for your contribution and all of your work. But I wanted to go a little further on this point, because in the United States, we've been just bombarded with videos and media showing these, quote, massive opposition rallies. Some of them are literally copy and paste of Chavista rallies with the opposition leaders photoshopped into some of these pictures. I literally saw a couple of those pictures shared pretty widely on X. Of course, we saw videos from past years that have nothing to do with the recent elections. But I wanted to talk to you because of your media background on this. First of all, I'm actually going to show a video here of one of the huge pro-Maduro protests just from a couple of days ago. So I'd like to show this to our audience. So there's a little sample. You see this wave of red, the Chavistas out in force.
John, that was like half a percentage of what I saw in that street. I honestly couldn't stay that long because I have permanent back pain. So we were standing there, we were waiting, I had to leave the stairs in front of the stage because as international observers, we had people take us from behind the stage, and they allocated a specific space of that stage for us. But still, because we were a lot, I couldn't stand for long. But I was able to go up that stairs and then look behind. I couldn't see the end of the line. And then you had those big screens that were showing some parts of the avenue. It was unbelievable. At one point, just after President Maduro came, I had to go back to the hotel. I couldn't stand anymore. I needed medication for my back. So we had to walk back to the station of the buses where the buses were parked. Thousands of people were still headed towards the area to take part of it. It was something that I've never seen before.
And it was so powerful to hear Maduro say, this, when they repelled the effort by the opposition and the foreign forces trying to meddle in the elections, that this is the working people repelling fascism in the country.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more to the role that the Chavistas, the rank and file of the working class in Venezuela played in counteracting this attempted coup by the United States and their puppets in the opposition.
Well, John, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of native Venezuelans, but I spoke with two beautiful women who actually worked an official job in one of the ministries in Venezuela, but they had a side job because of the besiegement and the sanctions and the economic hardships that are basically imposed on Venezuela by the United States of America. They had to pick another job, a second job for their family just to keep up with the inflation and whatnot. And I was curious to know whether or not that would affect them politically, and that if that would affect how they looked at the establishment that's running Venezuela in the midst of this economic sanctions and economic hardships. And I couldn't believe how powerful these women were with their convictions towards being Chavistas, towards being part of the revolution, towards the Bolivarian revolution, and towards being truthful to their resistance, to their struggle. They say we completely understand. That's what's different when it comes to Latin American countries. People are educated enough, they know about their history and the history of others to be able to think properly. Critical thinking is very important to do a revolution, be successful in it, and then keep that revolution alive. Hence why, for example, the revolution in Iran is such a successful hit. The same thing in Latin America, in Cuba and Venezuela, and other places where things are getting heated, where the US is trying to install puppet governments. But in Venezuela, the people who are suffering the most because of these sanctions, themselves, who tried so hard to cope with the changes and find second and third jobs to be able to feed their families properly, they knew that it was not because of the government, because the government was actually giving them free healthcare, it was giving them free schooling, it was giving them what they needed to survive the least. And it was on their own to try and find more opportunities to be able to make better ends meet for their families. But they knew who the real enemy was. One of them showed me an application made by the Venezuela government. And by the way, remind me to tell you about the engineer that we met one day before the elections. He explained to us, he was the one who who actually helped create the process of the electoral process in Venezuela. But that lady showed me an app for the people of Venezuela that they use each one. It's linked to their ID card, and they pay all their bills there. They see all of their taxes there, and they see what the government provides them there. Added to that, her direct cousin was one of the people who was given a free house. If people don't know, Maduro was able to give 5,100,000 houses for free for people so they won't be homeless. And he promised that in the upcoming year, he's going to be giving 2.5 million. The numbers are, we are 4 million in Lebanon. The numbers, it means with 5,100,000, we would have had homes for everyone, plus the refugees in Lebanon. So it's for me, the numbers are beyond my ability to comprehend. So she was telling me that her direct cousin was sometimes at her mother's house, sometimes at her mother-in-law's house. They didn't have a house, and her kids needed proper care, and she wasn't fortunate enough to be able to provide. So the government gave her a house, and she was telling me that only that, even if she wouldn't find bread, she would be thankful for that. I know that's not enough, because humans have rights to be living a good, normal standard of living. But when you are sanctioned, like Syria, for example, like Iran, like Venezuela, like North Korea, you would find the beautiful things in these small things. And this small thing is something huge for the US, because they could never do. Look at the millions of homeless inside of the US, millions of homeless people under bridges, in the streets, and most of them are drug addicts. That is something you don't see in the streets of Venezuela. People say that Latin America is infested with cartels, especially drug cartels. I'm not saying no. I'm saying what I saw. If I would go to Chicago, or I would go to LA, or I would go to New York, the number of people living in the streets and sleeping in the streets, not having had a proper meal for days, sometimes weeks, would be more than I could count. I never saw that in Venezuela. I never, ever saw that in Cuba, because everyone has a meal in Cuba. In Cuba, there are neighborhoods where each neighborhood has a kitchen. It's called a community kitchen, where if you don't find breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you just go there and you get a serving for free. That's how governments should treat their people. But the United States of America doesn't like it, because it doesn't fall under the capitalist world that's trying to take over the globe with it. So in Venezuela, she was talking to me about that application and how that makes her life so much easier, because it cuts down relationship between the citizens and employees in the government, which basically cuts down all sorts of corruption. That's something we would dream of in Lebanon. So these small things, this is what I really care about, because there are a lot of people who could talk strategy and what that is affecting the economy and numbers and whatnot. That's very, very important. But for me, as someone going there for the first time, I want to touch upon these basic issues that everyday life throws in our way as a challenge, and we as humans have to cope with them, whether you're living in, I don't know, Finland or Venezuela or right here in Beirut. How the people are coping, and who do they hold responsible for those challenges. But the people were very, very aware. They knew where they were, they knew their history, and they knew that there's a big plan being put together to be implemented in their country, and they're willing to give their lives to defend the integrity and the sovereignty of their country.
Well, Marwa, that was beautiful. And what all this boils down to for me is the United States and the elites in the West, the political leadership, are engaged in this process of really trying to invent a different reality from whole cloth.
Yeah.
A reality that doesn't reflect what the situation actually is on the ground. As you mentioned, whether it's Latin America, kind of associating governments like Maduro with the drug cartels and so on, when these governments are often the ones that are the ones fighting against these forces.
I think Afghanistan has all the records for the U.S. establishment being part of the drug cartels.
Yeah, and that's where I'm going to. Whether it's the Middle East, the same principle applies. What are the governments that are actually fighting these quote radical forms of like dogmatic Islam? In many cases, it's the governments who the United States labels the enemies of the West, Iran and others. And so I'm kind of pivoting a little bit to the axis of resistance. One of the myths that underlies the continuation of Israel is this notion of the strong partnership between Israel and the United States, and that the United States has always existed to defend Israel, that their relationship is still strong. And you heard this past week, United States leaders pledging to back Israel in the event that Iran or other members of the Axis of
course.
Resistance
If they do otherwise, I would be surprised. Definitely.
Of course, but so I wanted to get though to the question of, you know, is this a paper tiger, right? Is what we're looking at a paper tiger? What is the actual strength of Israel and its allies in the region and Israel?
No, it's not a paper tiger, John. Look at Gaza. It's not a paper tiger, but it's not what it used to be. Let me explain. When you say partnership between Israel and the American establishment or the United States of America in this matter, I think the past 10 months have proven that it's not a partnership. It's rather the biggest military base that the United States of America has in the world. It's called Israel. Why? Because if you remember very well, if you go back to November, just 1 month after the war, Netanyahu was crying hard, wanting everyone not only to come to Tel Aviv, give him a bear hug at the airport, but also to send in weapons. What kind of superpower? The most powerful, invincible army in the world, that after just less than a month of genocidal war, where you are superior in that war, you would ask for weapons and ammunition and bombs, and to a point that the US were sending it bombs that it hadn't tried before. They tried them all on Gaza. They tried a couple here in South Lebanon. I've heard that some of those munitions, the white phosphorus one, might have tracks of some things that are really harmful to humans. I don't know what kind chemically they are, but I know that we can't go back until it's tested by the health ministry in Lebanon. So I know that the new weapons that were sent to be tried on our people, but they were sent because Israel doesn't have any. The tanks, now they're crying that they don't have enough tanks because they were majorly blown up in Gaza and on the border with occupied Palestine, between occupied Palestine and Lebanon by the Lebanese resistance. So what are they talking about? What partnership? It is a military base that needed ammunition as fast as possible to continue conducting the genocide that it started on October 7th. But when you ask, is it a paper tiger? No. Israel is not a paper tiger. Israel has F-16s, F-35s, and F-15s, and it's capable of throwing tactical nuclear weapon. The same thing that we watched in 2015 in Yemen, being thrown on Mountain Faj'atan. Faj'atan, it was tactical nukes that were dropped there, and there's evidence of that. And there's also scientists who tried to publish but were not allowed. They were threatened to lose their career if they publish about this. So it has been used before. It has been used also in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So why wouldn't they use it in South Lebanon? Who's going to stop them? What I say, the only thing that would stop them is a balanced deterrence, powerful, massive resistance on the ground, because the resistance, the backbone of the resistance in Hezbollah is their firepower with rockets, their ability recently to down F-16s with air defense missiles, and their full capability to do ground invasion. And the last one is what really worries Israelis, because people don't know that, or they either don't know or they forget that for the past 14 years, Hezbollah has gained massive experience inside of Syria in ground battlefield and in using heavy armory, heavy machinery. Who said that Hezbollah doesn't have tanks? Who said Hezbollah that doesn't have armored vehicles? Who said Hezbollah doesn't have air power? We don't know. They have an airport, and we've never seen any plane there, but they haven't. What is the airport doing there? No one knows. It might be to get some planes full of weapons, but again, it might be something else. Never mind. But the issue here is they have great power on the ground, incursion powers on the ground, and guided missile powers, which can bypass the interceptive missiles of Israel, the Iron Dome or the Slingshot or whatever it is that they have, because it has to go, the interceptive missiles, it has to go upwards in a trajectory. It cannot follow a weapon that is guided and that goes in a straight line. It's very, very difficult. The only way to stop it would be like an F-16 or F-6 swarms of F-16s trying to find if there's, and they can't follow it. It's very, very fast. So in that particular area, what really scares Israelis is that there's nothing that would stop Hezbollah from either entering or using those new kind of weaponry that we don't know yet if Hezbollah is going to use or not. They're keeping them away for a reason. I don't know if they're going to use them in this retaliatory operation that's going to happen maybe tonight, maybe in a week. I don't know. But this is what scares Israel. What scares Israel is not that Hezbollah is capable of only having long-range missiles that he can find from Syria all the way to Dimona. No, they're not worried about that because they know for sure that Hezbollah will not be bombing a nuclear power plant because we have nuclear powers who support Israel will come and decimate Lebanon. There's no need to completely destroy Israel. One rocket or a couple rockets, a couple 100 rockets, but let's say 1 or 2 dozen rockets with guided missiles. We're talking about laser guided, they know where they're going, aimed at very important sites, military sites. If they hit their target inside of Israel, no one will remain there. And I'm not talking out of being proud of having a resistance that, no, I'm talking with numbers and with information. Look at the borderline between Lebanon and occupied Palestine. It's 103 kilometers. To a depth of more than 13 kilometers, there's no Israeli in sight, Israeli settler. There are Intel, Mossad, and IOF, but there are no settlers. These settlers, if you watch the Israeli media, there are a lot of reports where after Israel took them to Tel Aviv hotels, they don't want to come back. You can find them in Hebrew and translate the transcript into English. They don't want to come back. They say that even if the war ends today, no one's going to make me go back because it's not safe. This is what a non-native would say. In comparison to a native like my uncles and like 10% of Khiyam village, which is my village on the border with occupied Palestine, they're still there. I'm mad at them. You need to leave because it's not worth it to die from artillery shelling from a Zionist genocidal entity. They say, no, we're staying. That's our land. That's basically why Israel occupied us for 18 years, despite the many massacres in the Khiyam itself that it conducted, even against seniors who couldn't leave. They have nowhere to go. They're too old to move. They can't find someone to take them, especially the ones that they did in the 70s and the 80s. They would line them up in the town square and shoot them dead. And yet people refused to leave, which is why there was checkpoints and occupied land. There were no settlements built because the people refused to leave. And Israel couldn't keep killing them. But on the other side, right now, there are no Israeli settlers, and only because they're afraid of what Hezbollah might do. It wouldn't take, look at the retaliation that's going to happen, that's for sure is going to happen. It doesn't need to have swarm of drones and firepower that we've never seen before, because people, a lot of the videos that are AI generated videos show you that the firepower of Hezbollah with like 3,000 rockets and whatnot and swarms. No need for that. Said Hassan Nasrallah in his last speech during the funeral of Commander Shukr, he said, look, Israelis, you broke or you trespassed the red line by 4 variables. First of all, you targeted the capital. And Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah since 2006 has said, since the day of victory of 2006 in August 14, 2006, he said, if you hit Beirut, we will hit Tel Aviv, because this is what you consider as your capital. We're going to hit you there. So they hit Beirut, and he said that multiple times throughout the 10 months that have passed. Second, they hit a residential area. That's a big no-no. Third, they killed kids and women. And fourth, they assassinated a commander. And all of that is being supposedly a retaliation to Majd al-Shams, which after they assassinated Shukr, they issued statements saying that Shukr was part of the 1983 Beirut barracks bombings. I'm sorry, didn't you say that he's responsible for the Majd al-Shams one? Confusion. They themselves exposed their lie, because Majd al-Shams residents in the occupied Golan Heights, they themselves said, we know it's an Iron Dome failed missile, because since February, there have been multiple videos that document the fact that the Iron Dome has been failing and throwing rockets in the vicinity of the actual town. And why would Hezbollah, of all places, target Syrians occupied by Israel and a settler area? Why wouldn't he bomb Kiryat Shmona, where the real settlers are? They wouldn't, because since the beginning of the war, they've been targeting bases. N'importe quoi. It's fine. We don't need to talk about that in specific about it was a lie. It was not. It was a lie. We know that the international media is portraying it as being a true narrative. It's not, and the evidence is the actual statement by the Zionists themselves when they assassinated Shukr. But the retaliation is going to be equal, reciprocal. It's going to be in a capital, or what they believe is the capital, because we don't identify as believers in the capital, and it's going to be in the capital. It's going to be in residential area. They will take out settlers, because that's the equation. Why is our blood impure and their blood pure? Is our kids okay to die? 16,000 kids so far killed in Gaza. 16,000. No one even flinched. Why? Don't they have parents? Don't they have the right to exist? Don't they have international law to protect their right to exist? We don't believe in international law anymore. We believe in our resistance. And since the chief of that resistance said that we will reciprocate, we 100% believe it. You can take that clip after the retaliation and see whether or not my faith is in the right place.
Well, I'm so glad that you got to. I really wanted to ask you to go in depth on the deterrence capabilities of Hezbollah. So I'm glad that we got there. But I wanted to go back to what you said at the beginning, which was that it's not a paper tiger, obviously, and Israel is essentially a military outpost for the United States. I mean, this is how it's served functionally for decades. And one thing that we hear in the West is this weird narrative that pops up both on the right and the left. This notion that it's actually Israel that's the dominant player, that Israel is the one controlling the United States. I don't know, this notion has really gained a lot of popularity in the mainstream, especially in the discourse online. But I wanted to actually play a video from Hassan Nasrallah from April, underlying what the Axis of Resistance actually believes and how they see Israel in this context. So.
Sure.
الاتصال الأخير من بايدن بيأكد كل اللي كنا نقوله سابقا، إنه لا، الأمريكان بس بدهم يشغلوا يوقفوها بيوقفوها. إنه الأمريكي ما بيقدر يفرض على الإسرائيلي، هذا حكي فاضي. لو بتعرف في هيك نظريات إنه إسرائيل هي حاكمة أمريكا، لا حبيباتي، أمريكا هي الحاكمة إسرائيل. هاي قصة اللوب اليهودي والصهيوني، هاي ما تواخذوني نكتة عربية بس لحتى العرب ما يقاتلوا إسرائيل، وحتى يروحوا على أمريكا ويحطوا فلوسهم بأمريكا ويعملوا علاقات مع أمريكا إنه بدنا نعمل لوبي عربي لننافس اللوب اليهودي. وشفنا 75 سنة شو طلع مع اللوب العربي، غير إنه الأموال العربية كلها مكدسة في الخزائن الأمريكية.
And there we go. The Axis of Resistance realizes that the United States is the dominant player here, that ultimately it comes down to the political will of the United States, and allowing and facilitating and sponsoring this genocide that we're seeing on Gaza, as well as the other brutal acts of aggression that the Zionist entity has committed for so long. But I wanted to, I know we have other topics to get to, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this point and any reactions to those words by Nasrallah.
Well, it's because, John, we in Lebanon firsthand felt the dominance of the United States of America over Israel. If you remember, in 1983, up until 1983, the United States of America had a strong presence in Lebanon, military presence in Lebanon. A lot of people are a bit triggered when I talk about this because they lost their sons and daughters in the Barak bombings. And as a mother, I do understand their feelings. But as a native occupied, seeing horrendous tragedies because of the presence of their daughters and sons, sorry, I can't feel any compassion. They're there not because there was a gun put to their head. They're there because they chose to be there. And if they were there and then wanted to get out, but no one would allow them, that's a lie, because you can get out when you want, when you are in the military. And there's a lot of evidence for that. But what happened in Beirut in specific, it was like They were stationed with the French forces in Beirut. And from the south, Israel was doing everything it could to eliminate my people and eliminate the natives from the land, to occupy that land and to take control of Lebanon. And it had help from ridiculous traitors in Lebanon, who went basically to the lowest end of history because of their backing of an enemy against their own people. And yet it was pushed back, because when you have nothing else to lose, John, is when you are the most dangerous person in the world. Look at Gaza. Oh my God, 93 to 95% decimated. That's a carpet bomb. Yeah, there are now mountains. Gaza is a desert. Now there are mountains in Gaza because of the level of destruction caused by US weapons dropped by Israel. So, but still, we're day 302, I guess. And just this morning, there were missiles fired into Ashdod in Arabic. They were fired from Gaza, from the 95% decimated Gaza. Because if you have nothing, lost all your family, you can't find food, but you have a stockpile of weapons, would you just sit and watch after everything has been taken away from you? Of course not. Of course not. I don't know how to use it. I'll watch a YouTube video and learn. I don't know. I'll use it. But that's when you have nothing else to lose. And this is what happened in Lebanon, 1982, 1983. And that was the ignition of expelling occupation forces from the region, because they tried again in Iraq, they tried again in Afghanistan. And we all remember how they fled from Afghanistan and how they didn't even keep their promises to the agents, to the Afghani agents who worked for them, who ended up falling from that military airplane. We all remember those images, and remember now how they are being targeted for the past 11 months in the eastern part of the Euphrates in Syria, because they are in an occupation, literally sitting on Conoco and Omar oil fields, the oil fields that would help Syria bypass the sanctions and the economic hardships that the US imposed on it. They're sitting there looting that oil, taking away all the sovereignty of Syria, and taking away its capability of being self-sufficient by burning for the third year in a row the wheat in Syria, because it is self-sufficient with food, but they don't want to allow it to even stand on its own feet because they're in occupation. And that's why they were bombed yesterday, and they will be bombed tomorrow, because natives will not just sit and abide by your rules when they see you doing what you do. You take everything for granted, you don't help whatsoever, and you help the enemy to take them out, to take their leaders out, to occupy more land, to invade their airspace and violate their airspace and bomb their people and bomb their government and bomb their army. Who's the Syrian Arab army? It's part of the Syrians. They're sending their kids to defend the country. Same thing when it comes here in Lebanon or in Palestine. Look, we have nothing to lose. We've been adapting for at least 100 years. We've had multiple occupations come and go. I mean, look at the Turkish occupation. They occupied us for 400 years, but they're not here anymore. Yes, I might be of Turkish descent. My name is Osman Leh. Every time I go to Turkey, they say, you're of Turkish origin. I honestly don't know, but I know that for the past 250 years, my grandparents have been living in South Lebanon. That's my grandparents. I'm not talking about my husband's grandparents, who are basically, their family tree goes back at least 700 years in South Lebanon. In Jabal Amid, Mountain Amid. So we're talking about a nation and a people, an ummah that has gone through hell and came back multiple times and yet survives. And the essence of this survival, wallahi, is just faith. Is that you have faith. You don't have to be Muslim. You don't have to be Christian. You have faith. If you have faith that you are on the right side, that you have right for self-determination, you have a right to decide what you do with your own resources, you have a right to say no to the people who are trying to kill you, to detain your children, to take away their freedoms, then you will get there, because no one can stand in your face. I mean, can you imagine if we're now under occupation, if we're still under occupation? First of all, I most probably would have been here. I would have been in a detention center somewhere, because I would have smacked some Zionist somewhere at a checkpoint. I would be detained. But can you imagine where Lebanon would have been had it not been for the resistance that liberated us, that liberated our detainees, that gave us a secure pathway back to our country, side, to our towns, where we either had land or bought more land and built our own communities, and we're living ecstatic. I was about, and my dream was to move completely to Khiam within 7 to 10 years. Now, I don't know if that's applicable, but even if that's not applicable, I could wait 7 or 10 years and rebuild my house. It's fine. I'm going to go there, whether now or in 10 years.
Well, I do want to ask you, because we know the strength of and cohesion of Hezbollah, but outside of Lebanon, what is the cohesion and unity of the Axis? The only places that I worry about, obviously, I don't worry about Yemen, because they will fight anybody that comes along. But
absolutely, they had problems between North Yemen and South Yemen. After Palestine, the South joined the North, and they're both bombing Israel.
I hope so. And but I worry about Syria and Iraq. What is the support and the unity of those resistance forces inside of Syria and Iraq?
You can go to Syria and Iraq and talk to the people who are not very happy with how things are going with their government and with the way that things are being unorganized in the country. There are a lot of reasons. Obviously, Iraq was occupied and still has occupation bases, and it was looted beyond imagination. And so was Syria. But the regular day-to-day mother, father, student, they have a lot of hardships that could have been avoided had it not been for these wars. And they have every right to hold their governments responsible. You can hear them talking about this. But when it comes to an enemy like Israel, there's a very, very large, deep line that they draw, and they say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I was in Damascus, May? Yes, in May. I was in Damascus in the first week of May. I had a seminar at the Syrian Foreign Ministry with Professor Mohammed Marandi and Professor Tim Anderson. We were presenting our own perception, if you will, and perspective of how things are going with the Al-Aqsa flood operation and what came after it. And I got to, first of all, talk to the people. I always talk to the people in Syria. I have thousands of friends there, but talk to people that I usually don't meet. And I was there experiencing an Israeli entity attack on Damascus. It was 4 a.m. in the morning. We were sleeping in our beds, and I woke up to the sound of bombs. And it was Zionist Israel bombing the area of Sayda Zainab, which is like 70 or 80 kilometers from the center of the city. But since Damascus is like an open area after the mountain, you could hear everything. So I lived through that, and then I woke up in the morning, and I went down to the streets, and we were visiting a couple of areas, and I was able to talk to people, like the taxi driver and the shop owner and whatnot. And I was like, what do you think? What do you think? Why do you think that Israel is still doing this? And everyone answered equally, whatever their level of acceptance or a disagreement with the government is. They said it's because Syria never fell. It's because Syria is still standing, because they want us, they want to break us, because they want to take our country. We will not allow this. Whatever happens, we stand with Syria. So this level of patriotism that you hear and the feedback coming from the people tells you a lot, that whatever you watch on a Western report, on Western channel, a report telling you that people in Syria are fed up, or they want to have an opportunity to have a normalization with Israel, if that even had a small percentage of truth in it after October 7, no way. No way. Look, you know what Israel did over the past 15 to 20 years, since even before that, since 2003, to be honest, because it started with America and then it followed through with Israel. They were successfully able to break the Arab and Islamic world into sectarian parties, especially Sunnis versus Shias. You know what Israel had done over the past 10 years? Erased that. That's the biggest failure, or strategic failure, for Zionist Israel and the imperial world, because they spent millions of dollars and decades of work and intel to break the public and to fracture communities based on sects. And then you have Zionist Israel committing the genocide of the century everyone aligned back. I mean, look what happened with Haniyeh. You had a Shia imam leading a prayer for a Muslim, the most prominent Muslim leader in the world, and behind him were lined up Muslims, Sunnis, and Shias. And then you had that body flown over to Qatar, and you had another Sunni funeral where Shias were also present, also praying to get. That is a scene that I haven't seen for at least 20 years. People wake up, even if it's too late.
Well, I wanted to go to the traitorous Arab states and talk a little bit more about them and where they're positioned at the current moment, because of course we've seen just an utter failure, obviously, to come to the aid of the Palestinians in any meaningful material way. And in fact, many of these states like Jordan and Bahrain have directly assisted the Zionist entity in defending them, in taking part in the coalition against Yemen, for example, in the case of Bahrain. But I would like to maybe get your insights on where this kind of traitorous coalition, as you mentioned, who has also encouraged the sectarianism in the Arab world and in the greater Middle East, which is in stark contrast, I believe, to the Axis of Resistance forces, which have encouraged the unity among the Ummah. But I wanted to hear a little bit about where these kind of traitorous Arab nations are situated at the current moment. Of course, we've seen Egypt decline to take part, or supposedly it's stated they've declined to take part in defending Israel in the case of retaliation by Iran or the Axis of Resistance forces. But what your expectation is for these countries moving forward?
Well, I have zero expectations from any of those countries. I saw a couple of days back a report on Channel 12, the Israeli Channel 12. They did a big report with a big video wall showing those countries, those 5 countries that supposedly Israel is trying to communicate with, so they could activate their air defense missiles to try and stop any missiles that are coming from Iran, Iraq, or Yemen, because they can't do anything about Lebanon or Syria, but they can do about Iraq, Iran, and Yemen. And one of those states had their foreign minister fly all the way to Tehran yesterday and speak with high-level personnel there for the first time, because if you don't know, they don't have even diplomacy between each other. They don't have embassies between them. I'm talking about Jordan and Iran. And that was a first. And I don't know what they spoke about, but I can see from the photo the body language of both, and it was like, the Jordanian one was not happy. So, but that's just me analyzing something that could be nothing. But and honestly speaking, we've seen in April 14 what Jordan did. Egypt, Jordan, they closed off their airspaces. Despite the fact that Iran actually formally told them, Iran was telling the entire world, we are going to bomb Israel in 10, 9, 8. That was like funny for me, because usually when you do something you don't say. But for that particular moment, because it was the first time ever in Iranian history that Iran actually initiates a retaliatory attack, despite the fact that Israel has been assassinating nuclear scientists, nuclear physicists, and military people for the past at least 45 years. I know a person whose father was assassinated in China, and he was part of the embassy, and he was killed by the Mossad. And that was at least 38 years ago. So it's been for decades going on. So despite that, on April 14, and despite, it was like 300 rockets and only 9 of them landed, it was big. Israel had 7 layers of protection and still 9 missiles landed, and it was only Iran attacking. Imagine if they decide to attack all at the same time. Ya Allah. Amazing. It would be a sight to see. Not because we like seeing missiles land on Israel because we're anti-Semite, no, but because every action has a reaction. They're called consequences. When you perform the biggest genocide in history against the biggest open-air prison in the world, killing so far as what the ministry says, more than 45,000, what the Lancet says, 186,000, and that was a shy estimate. It might be more than 200,000. Missiles will be landing on you. That's a given.
You live by the sword and you die by the sword. Right?
Love it.
That's
definitely
the ancient traditions.
Living and dying by the sword. We have some good news. I think it's a pleasant surprise. Look who popped up in Tehran. big announcement coming off of that meeting today, really good feels. And then with Russia's final statement being Russia is ready to fully cooperate with Iran in the region in regards to this escalation. How do you feel about that? I know that in the Arab world,
and to sell weapons to all of the adversaries of the United States of America because of what America is doing in Ukraine.
Yep. And that was from Medvedev, actually. And then that was from Medvedev a while ago. And then it kind of became like, oh, yeah, that's right. We can do that. So I know in the Arab world, or at least the online Arab world, sometimes they're a little bit critical of Russia. Do you see this as them finally stepping up and taking a role? Or are you still like, let's see where this goes?
Look, I'll be honest with you. A lot of people who don't really understand how states operate and how states have interests would sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable with the role of Russia, especially in Syria. And I've heard a lot of complaints coming from Syrians about the role of Russia because they weren't stopping Israel from conducting those aerial offensive and aggressions against Syria, despite the fact that Russia itself it went through a lot of pain because of Israel. Because if you remember the plane that Israel it was bombing Syria, and then the air defense missiles were activated, and the Israeli F-16 went and hid behind a Russian plane, and the plane was downed by a Syrian fire because of that very, very like slick and inhumane and without a slit of integrity. That's how the devil works. And yet Russia was still not taking the position that we as natives would have been happy and satisfied with. But there's no, like, it's not black and white when you're talking about big states like China or Russia. I mean, China has been doing great when it comes to speaking out against the genocide. Russia has been doing amazing with the foreign ministry, especially in the UNSC for Gaza. They pushed for that UNSC resolution that's just like, yeah, we laughed. In Lebanon, in the region, we laughed when that passed because we knew it's never going to be applied. But they did what it was their duty to do. The human duty was to support the people who were being slaughtered. And now, with the new alliances that are happening and with the new emergence of this power of the BRICS against the power of the US and its allies in the world, it has to be manifested and translated on the ground. And when you look at each part of the world, it seems like the world is about to explode, Sarah. It's like you have Ukraine and Russia, you have the entire West Asian part of the world, you have Sudan, you have Libya, you have countries in Niger, in Africa, you have the China Sea, you have they have their own thing going on, and you have India and Pakistan, and you have the turmoil inside of Europe. Look what has been happening in the UK. It's very dangerous over the past couple of days. This can lead to civil war. People are just, they can't imagine civil war in Britain. Yes, if you don't take care of the situation as fast as possible. And Latin America, small wars getting connected, becoming one big fireball.
Exactly.
You are a giant state. You have great responsibility. We've seen that the US absolutely doesn't care to a point that it had a senile human being presented as the leader of the free world when he doesn't even know his name anymore. Haram, wallah, that was elderly abuse. Wallah, that was like, I don't like him, I don't care about him, but that was elderly abuse. The man had Alzheimer's. He can't remember anything anymore, and yet he was still there. They didn't care a bit because it was all for show. His position means nothing. They were running the show all along, and they will continue to do that. But they failed in their responsibilities to protect their allies in Europe. They failed when they allowed major psyops to happen, especially with Nord Stream, not preventing the Europeans from being given heat at a considerably low price because they wanted to sell their own oil and gas to Europe, thousands of dollars more. That would be a big, we've been following what's happening with the bills and the taxes in Europe. And they want to keep a foot in West Asia, stealing what they can by fueling this kind of a war that they can basically control. You know, they don't want an all-out war, but they don't want a ceasefire. You know what I'm saying? They keep everything just uncomfortable enough for them to continue doing what they do best: loot resources and just play with puppet governments. I'm never surprised when it comes to having new movements like the ones that we're seeing from Russia and China towards Iran and even towards Saudi Arabia. And that is what scared the United States of America. It scares them to see Russia and China getting good relationship with Saudi Arabia, the one that has the most amount of gas and oil so far, because there's the data that says Yemen has the biggest amount of gas and oil in the world. Actually, it might surpass Venezuela, but data is always suppressed, so it wouldn't allow the Yemenis to do their own thing and to develop their own country. But even though it was so scary for them that you remember when the rapprochement happened between China and between Iran and Saudi Arabia because of China, and the rapprochement between Mohammed bin Salman and Putin, how Mohammed bin Salman, how miraculously articles against Mohammed bin Salman and against his regime and the human rights violations that Saudi Arabia is committing against its people, despite the fact that there are a lot, but suddenly they emerge in the media and then suddenly they disappear when the royal throne gets shaken, pays a bit of money, says, no, don't worry about it. Let's buy a new set of planes. Let's buy some games from you, firepower that we're never going to use, or if we're going to be using, we're going to be killing Yemenis with, and then then have Yemenis drop bombs on our Aramco. So they bypass this level of uncertainty. But all of these regimes that were put in place after World War II, that are completely submissive to the Western world, are trembling, because if this actually goes into an all-out war, it will not stop until liberation. It will be heavy loss. I close my eyes and I imagine it. Both sides are going to pay a lot, but it's always who has the longest breath. And it's been proven that it's the natives. And what scares those regimes is that eventually, if it's now or in 10 years' time, when the occupation is completely kicked out of the region, they have no one else to protect them from their own people. It's not like states in the Arab world will be running over and trying to occupy other states. No. The people will take down the puppet regimes who have been oppressing them since World War II.
Well, I do want to read it's a short statement just quickly before we close. So during their discussion, Pezeshkian, I always have trouble with Armenian names, you Armenians, but emphasized the need to expedite the implementation of agreements between the two nations. They highlighted the shared stance on and promoting the multipolar world, asserting that collaboration would enhance global stability. But I think this last part is the most important. Iran also underscored the enduring support Russia has provided to Iran during challenging times and reiterated the developing relations with Moscow remains a priority with Tehran. So moving forward, it looks like the lines are being drawn. And as we always say, it's just East versus West, NATO versus non-NATO, or the evil empire versus the non-evil empire.
And keep in mind, Sarah, that physically, Russia doesn't have to get involved. It just should provide the weapons, because the natives themselves are ready. They just need the firepower to get to the goal that they want. And it's if with the weapons they have, they can prolong this war for at least 2 to 3 years. But with weapons given to them or bought by them from Russia, it could change the entire equation.
Well, Russia and the West have opposite problems then. Russia has nobody Russia has all the weapons in the world and no shortage of men, and the West has no weapons and all of the men are dying. So
yet they don't see where their real interest is. Wallahi, look, there's like the ultimate I don't know what you call it, like the ultimate beauty pageant question, like world peace. I wish for world peace, when they go in that ridiculous statement. It is not that hard actually to attain that. It is not that hard. It's just greed and hunger for power. It's basic human sin. Those very immoral values that control those who are leading the West, that brought them to this point in life. Greed and hunger for power. Yani, I really don't understand, what are they not seeing so far? Haven't they not seen the denigration in the values inside of the United States of America or in Europe? people might laugh, especially the atheists people. I'm sorry, I don't want to trigger anyone, but people who don't believe in God, they have every right to do so. That's not my problem. My problem is that when you talk to them about the loss of value and loss of family units and the loss of respect, like simple respect between humans that are ready to kill one another over a bag of chips, that only happens in the United States of America. That denigration in society cannot be solved by attacking other people and stealing their resources to funnel and fuel more war, to steal more resources. It can last for like 100 years, but it can last forever.
Well, thank you so much, Marwa. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. And you can go lay down with your migraine and a cool cloth, I hope. So Marwa, please tell us about your new project that I was just on. I had the pleasure of being on and it was amazing, but tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I'm actually backing a friend in this project, and it's called Hupo, and I love their work, and I'm helping them get some guests and whatnot, and it's been a pleasure because they're a new platform. They're called Hupo. You can find them all across the social media. You can find them on online as well on YouTube, and they have this amazing show called Red Pilled, which Sarah was kind enough to accept the invitation that they sent to her, and it was such a nice discussion. I watched it when I was in Venezuela, and it was amazing. And I wish them all the best. I'm ready to help any kind of platform, especially the ones that are built right here in Lebanon, to excel and to develop and to show the world what really is happening. Just like I am part of Press TV, and I'm very proud to be a part of Press TV. I'm also willing to help, especially those small startups that my students are also doing. I'm so proud to help them with it. They're majorly in Arabic though, but I'm so proud to promote it. That's something that I see as a fruit of my own labor, being sowed in them and planted in them. And so is this new platform for my friend. And I will forever be thankful and appreciative of Press TV for allowing me to voice my concerns and to tell the story for my part of the world, and to give me their platform and to give me 2 shows instead of 1. That's like, thank you, Press TV, for the trust. And I'm always going to support anything, any kind of media project that is launched from our part of the world, because for years, Sarah, we've been suppressed and our voice has been stolen. It's about time that we have our own voice.
John, any final closing thoughts? You look like your mind's a little blown, but.
Well, it's just been amazing to listen to Marwa.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure.
Have been so enlightening, and the chickens are coming home to roost, right? Malcolm X said it famously in 1963 after the Kennedy assassination, that the chickens come home to roost. And right now it feels like the entire flock is returning all at once, whether it's in the Sahel, whether it's in Venezuela, whether it's in Palestine, whether it's in our own homes, where we're seeing in the UK this division, the collapse, the seeming collapse of the Western economy that we all woke up to this morning. So tumultuous times, but I'm very thankful.
Whatever happens, John, we are on the right side of history, and we will win.
We will win. Absolutely. And Palestine will be free. Thank you
it
all.
Will.
Good morning. We'll be talking to Denny Dinslow. I always have trouble with his name. Talk about what's going on in the UK. Please follow Marwa, and please follow the new platform. It's excellent, excellent, excellent. Production level is way up there. And guys, stick with us. We'll get you through the information war that we are about to be very, very inundated with. So thanks again, Marwa, and we will see all of you guys on Wednesday.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.